I would stream from 6 to 12 and I would wake up at 8 and I would work at 8:30. I did that every day. And I did it because I enjoyed it. And I think that's important, that you need to do it because you enjoy it, not because you're expecting to make it into income.
Why did you not give up?
I was doing it anyway.
Because you were playing games anyway, or because?
Yeah, I was doing it anyway. To me, the streaming wasn't about making it into a career. Like a lot of the streamers are too focused on making it or whatever, or keeping a schedule. I streamed every day because I wanted to play League and I wanted to talk to people. I didn't play because I wanted to make a lot of money being a streamer. My priorities have changed in a way. I'm not doing my streaming because I want to make a lot of money now. I'm doing my streaming because I want to reach out to more people. It's not really about League anymore for me. It's about reaching to the people.
Welcome to the Becoming a Streamer podcast by Pipeline, where we interview your favorite streamers and learn about their journey to where they are today. I'm your host and co-founder of Pipeline, Snoopeh. Today, I'm joined by Cowsep. For those of you listening on audio, you won't realize that he's actually got a cow costume on, so make sure you check out the video later. It's a big part of his brand. Cowsep has experience on so many streaming platforms, and he's also grown to over 750,000 subscribers on YouTube. In this podcast, he shares about how he got his first 15 viewers and then grew beyond that. He also goes deep into his journey as a content creator and all the ups and downs that come with it. If you love the episode, then please make sure you share it with a friend. And also a reminder for those that are not members of Pipeline, Pipeline enrollment is now open. So for more information on that, head over to pipeline.gg. Let's dive in and hear Cowsep's story. Cowsep, it's so good to see you again. Thanks for coming on the show.
Hey, it's a pleasure to be here, Snoopeh. Thank you.
So we've got a lot of people listening, and one thing that'd be great before we get too deep into your journey would just be give a sense of where you're at today. Where are you creating content? How often are you creating content?
Yeah, so today, I've been full-time streaming for 6 years, and now I'm living in Korea. I'm currently streaming on Facebook Gaming as my primary platform, and I also stream on Twitch, Trovo, and YouTube. I create YouTube videos as well, and pretty much all of my content is for League of Legends, but I'd love to get into vlogging and other things like that later.
Ooh, it's exciting. A lot of room for expansion in different areas. So you've been in the game a long time, but I imagine, your parents weren't necessarily creating content, or maybe they were. But if we wind the clock way back to when you were younger, before Cowsep was a thing, where did you grow up?
I grew up on a farm. I know it's kind of stereotypical because I'm dressed up like a cow, but yeah, having grown up, I grew up on a farm with my dad and my mother. They were never married or anything. They were just a couple, and then they split up. And when they split up, I lived with my mother initially, and my mother was very much against gaming and stuff like that. She was more traditional. And then I moved in with my dad when I was 8 years old, and that he pretty much supported me in whatever I did. And I think if I lived with my mother, I'd probably be living a traditional job right now. But my dad said, as long as I get good grades in school, he'll let me do whatever I want to do. And yeah, so that's pretty much how the gaming journey started, because me and him played games together, and he didn't really give me any restrictions on it as well.
What kind of games were you playing?
Oh, well, Super Nintendo, Nintendo 64. We like to play those games on the console. And also I played basketball, right? That was my real life thing. But I got kicked off of the basketball team because I didn't pay enough attention. It wasn't because of my skill levels, because I didn't pay enough attention. So kind of out of spite, I decided to just play games and never play basketball again.
When was that? When did you stop playing basketball? Like, what age were you at that point?
It was 6th grade in the US, which I believe is probably like 11 years old. I'm not exactly
That's
sure.
helpful for me. I've lived in the US for so many years now, and I still don't know what age a certain grade is. So that's helpful. So about 11, you went heavier into games. What was that first game that you really got stuck into?
Well, so when we look at online games, back in the day, we didn't really have computers if you were poor. So I grew up very, very poor, right? We bounced between houses, pretty much 2 or 3 houses a year. Some of them were really, really tiny. And so we didn't really afford a computer. So when it came to online games, I ended up getting a web TV, and it was basically a TV that was the internet. And I played Neopets, which was a browser game back in the day. I was always into RPGs and building your character. So it was a browser game called Neopets, and I'm sure a lot of people probably know of it, but I played that for many, many years and enjoyed it a lot. So that was the game that got me hooked, but it wasn't on a traditional PC.
So on Neopets, were you playing Neopets with your dad, or was this more when you broke off and started playing yourself?
Yeah, that's actually a really good point. Yeah, this is when I broke off because my dad, when I was born, right, my dad was already pretty old. So once we got about, the 10-year-old or whatever stage, 9 or 10, before RuneScape. This is before RuneScape. About 9 or 10, my dad stopped playing games with me because he was always really tired. He just wanted to spend time on the television, right? And I don't really blame him. He worked all day. So yeah, this is about when we started breaking off, is when I started doing Neopets on the computer and learning to build web pages and stuff.
Was there ever a part where you just got better than him? Like you were just starting as a young kid to get much better at video games, so it wasn't as fun for him anymore? Because
I mean, maybe I think that when we did branch off, we were pretty similar skill level. He might have been better to me. I always loved competing. And so like the thing that really kind of broke my heart was the day when I beat my dad at arm wrestling. That's what broke my heart. That's the one that I remember distinctly beating him on. But when it came to games, we broke off before I started beating him.
Okay. So Neopets was your game. Did you end up going to college, or, what did you go from like that age of going out of school? Did you go off and study? What did you do?
Yeah. So I guess we're skipping some years ahead here, right? I did go to college. I went to college for 4 years with a communication studies degree.
What took you to communication studies?
Well, initially, it's kind of, you have to backtrack a little bit to figure out why I did communication studies.
Let's do it.
So after Neopets, I got into competitive PvP type games, RPGs, names that nobody will know nowadays, right? And then around 2009, when I was 19 years old, I was pretty popular in another game called Grand Chase. It was pretty okay for the time. And this was about the time that League of Legends came out as well. But for this game, Grand Chase, I was 19 years old. I was in college and I was getting a political science degree because I was kind of into politics a little bit. And I designed my own web page and I became really popular. And I was basically making a second income through my website and gaming, right? And I was pretty well known by the username of Cow, which is before Cowsep, right? Because back then you didn't really need to add anything to the cow.
Where did the cow come from?
It was middle school. My ex-girlfriend was into some other guy, and he liked cows. So I thought if I liked cows, she would like me.
Really? That's where the cow came from?
Yeah, and it just kind of stuck because it turned out that's not why she liked him. So it didn't work.
And then you're stuck with cow now for the rest of the time?
Yeah, I like cow though. It's fine.
It is. I like
fine.
It too.
It's a good thing.
So when you're making this money on this, was it like a wiki type thing? What was the website?
Yeah, it was because back then the games were released in Korea before they were released in NA or whatever. So it's kind of like nowadays, if you play like League of Legends or whatever, they release updates and then it comes to live later. So my blog basically told people what was coming up. And so people thought of me as like the best player in the game. And I also had my own website that talked about what was happening. So that's kind of how I became popular initially.
Curious,
which also,
what made you do that? Why did you why'd you build a website? Why didn't you just like, I'm good at games, that's it? Like, I know a lot of players that are good at games. They didn't go build websites.
Yeah. So yeah, my life is complicated. As you sit here and talk about it, it starts to kind of make sense to me. Yeah, so I was into Korea things because we have to backtrack even more. I used to play games on the Korea server before they were released, right? So I was always into the Korean kind of games, right? Because I used to be into Japanese culture when I was like 13. And then I decided, everybody's into Japanese culture. I don't want to be like everybody else. So I need to find some other country that nobody's into right now. And then Korea just happened to fall in line with gaming at the time because of StarCraft, and they were making all the MMOs and stuff like that. So I got into the Korean games, and I already had experience doing it. And then when a game that I really liked and I was really good at had a Korea server that was producing this content, I'm like, well, I used to make websites when I was like 11 years old. I touched on that, the web TV thing. I used to make websites. So why don't I make a website here and give people this information? And I ended up accidentally creating a brand from that as well.
So there wasn't an intention behind it. It was just, I'm good at these things. I'm passionate about these things.
Yeah, I actually legitimately enjoyed it. And I think that's important.
So when we're talking about traction, you started to get known. Like, what does known mean? Because in the context today, you're obviously a very big content creator in League of Legends and going beyond that. But back then, what did big mean on Grand Chase?
Yeah, so so back then, this is before League of Legends was a thing, right? I started League of Legends right at the end of 2009, and before that, I was a known content creator. But content creators weren't a thing back then. Like YouTube was pretty primitive. It was been out for a few years then, but it wasn't a thing, like, really. So back then I had like, I don't know exactly how many subscribers. I had like 2,000 subscribers or something, but all of my YouTube videos made 50,000 to 150,000 views, right? Well, not all of them, but a lot of them did. And you can actually check my old YouTube channel, which is CowXDD. It's like the little smiley face.
That's we got to back up. So there's something went from I just started making a website to I was getting 50,000 views on a video, even though
the videos came from my website.
Even though I only had 2,000 subs.
Yeah. So the website was where they got their news and their content, right? And they knew about me. So back then you didn't subscribe to your creators on YouTube. So they bookmarked my website and they would check my website once a week for updates. And then the website would embed the YouTube videos for the updates, and they would watch the YouTube videos from my website. And that's how we went from 2,000 subs to 50 to 150,000 views. And to this day, you can see all the views there, but there's a small amount of subs because of the website.
It's almost like you were way ahead of your time.
I was, but I didn't know how to utilize it because back then nobody knew.
That's fascinating. Okay, so we've got iteration 1 of Cow Grand Chase. You're now at college. How were you balancing creating this content and building this website versus, your degree?
Yeah, so I ended up quitting because Grand Chase was starting to lose steam. I ended up quitting that while I was in college. But getting a degree in communication studies is not so hard. It's a lot of those degrees. I talk a lot to people on my stream about it, but schooling is what you make out of it. I don't think that schooling in general is terribly difficult or anything like that. If you do the bare minimum, you can get by quite easy. So there's not really a balance unless you're going into something that takes an immense amount of like skill and studying, right? Like communications and other things like that is it's already in you, right? It's just how you express it, and your teachers try to help you do that. So I didn't really feel like I had to balance because the degree itself was rather easy. Yeah, so I didn't have to do the website either. But that's when I started thinking. I was already established in this scene in Korea, right? Because of Grand Chase, that I would move to Korea and I would become a game developer is my idea there. So that's why I decided to get a nice, easy 4-year degree in something I was already good at, which was communication.
So you had the foresight already, just before you even getting a degree, you were like, well, I'm going to move to Korea anyway. Like, this is a given.
Yeah.
What gave you that confidence?
Because of my website and how well I did. Like, I knew that I would do well because when we were doing like social media classes or whatever, I told you I was like political science before I pivoted after my first year. I did the social media classes and I was just so far ahead of everybody else in social media, right? And I designed the website for the class. And so I kind of knew that I could do what I wanted to do in that regard. And I did some research, and it's really easy. If you have any 4-year degree at the time, right? I don't know how it is now. I could move to Korea as a teacher, and they would pay for the flight, and they also pay for your rent. So the idea is that if you're already in the country, it's much easier to get a position if you're like, instead of being out of the country, right? And so at the time I was also studying my Korean and positioning myself to be here.
What did your parents make of this?
Well, my mom never really talked to me. we just kind of split off, and I'm not sure whose fault that is because, split parents always like to blame each other. And my dad supported me. My dad just wanted to see me not get stuck in the system, as he called it, because my dad wanted to make his own business, and he did. And then sometimes he would have to go back and do work. Right. So he was really excited to see me move to Korea, and he was really proud to say that, his son was becoming a teacher, which is the best way to get into Korea, right? Is you become a teacher first. But to me, it wasn't about becoming a teacher. That was the stepping stone.
That's fascinating that you had the courage, and the foresight to just go, "Oh, this is what I'm doing." You're a young adult, but there's a lot that you hadn't learned yet.
There's a safety net though, because it's a contract of 1 year. So even if it fails, they also pay for your flight back.
So you had nothing to lose from your perspective.
Yeah, you do a year, and if it doesn't work out, you go back home.
I think there's a big lesson in that, is that take the leap.
Well, I took a leap, but I was also very safe at the same time. That's something. It's important to me to be safe. I'm not really a risk taker.
Interesting. So you're out in Korea. You've gotten some traction already from Grand Chase, but now you're out in Korea. This seems like the time where you were saying in like 2009, late 2009, League of Legends was kind of coming to fruition. How did you get into League?
Yeah. So before we hit that, when I came to Korea, I did not have any popularity. Like, all my Grand Chase popularity was useless because I let it die, because we didn't understand back then. We didn't understand how influencers and stuff worked. Right. So I had to start over again from scratch, which will be something I'll talk about. But yeah, so I got into League in 2009 because I did a lot of online dating, and that was wild. We're not even going to get into that, but yeah. So at the time, we always needed a game to play together, and Grand Chase was getting kind of boring, and then League of Legends kind of came out, and back then League of Legends was not as popular. It wasn't really popular. It was something that just came out, and it was really fun. So we just started playing it together. And yeah, when I came to Korea in 2009 to play Grand Chase professionally. There was a tournament. I guess I glossed over that. Yeah, I came here to play a tournament professionally. It was like the world's tournament for Grand Chase. And my teammates and me were playing League of Legends instead of practicing for the tournament. So I'm sure you have some experience with that. No, we did not win, but I'm sure you used to do pro play, right? So yeah. I'm sure you know how it feels. You're supposed to be practicing and you're off doing something else. So I was playing League of Legends.
So you had already acquainted. I was going to ask about that culture shock. Like, you'd already kind of immerse yourself in Korean culture when you've already been out there for Grand Chase. So was the move a big shock for you?
When I came to Korea the first time, I had my hand held by the team that was here, right? And my teammates. But yeah, it was when I got here, I realized that this is where I wanted to be, right? So when I got here in 2012, that's when I moved here 3 years later. When I got here in 2012, there was no culture shock, really.
Okay. So leagues, you start playing it through dating. At what point did you start getting back into content or see a path into content?
Yeah. So the whole reason that I got rid of all my content in the past is because of, at the time, my online girlfriend did not like what happened with Grand Chase because she felt neglected or something like that. So when I managed to break up with my girlfriend, that's when I obviously moved to Korea. And then in 2014, without the girlfriend weighing me down at that point, right? I decided to start streaming because I started in 2014. I started streaming because when I used to live in the USA, my computer wasn't good enough. Like, I couldn't even record like 20 FPS, right? It was terrible. Like, my old videos frame lagged and my internet was bad. So I've said, oh, you know what? I can try it again. So I started in 2014 to start trying to stream because it's something I always wanted to do because I already had familiarity with it in the past. Like, I wanted to do it when Justin TV was a thing.
So were you watching streams on Justin or anything at that point?
To be honest, I was too jealous. Because I already did it and I saw success in it, and I was jealous. And so what I always said is, why are people watching these streams when they could be playing the game themselves? I remember the days of like Guardsman Bob or whatever, when they started playing League of Legends on stream and stuff. And I was so jealous and I was so bitter because I felt like that opportunity could have been mine if I didn't let somebody hold me back. Right. And so I deflected and I made excuses. And I said, I don't understand why people are watching this person. Why don't they just play the game? And so I never watched streams because I never wanted to support something that I felt like I lost.
Wow, what a powerful reflection. Okay, so
it's kind of selfish.
I mean, but you're reflecting on it now and you're realizing how you felt at the time.
Yeah.
When you're in Korea, you start stream, you've got a computer now, you've got, I've been in Korea, I've lived there for a couple of months at a time. The internet is phenomenal, so I'm guessing the internet was not an issue anymore. You start streaming. Did you get back to that Grand Chase like level or like right away? Like what was your journey to becoming a content creator again?
So Grand Chase was just different because it wasn't about the influencer, it was about the game. And in a way, it's still about the game now. If I change games, right, I lose a significant viewership. But I never marketed myself in Grand Chase. I marketed my website. And so when I got into League in 2014, I marketed myself through the forums. So at the time, League of Legends had a forum. And so whenever I would start streaming, I would say, I'm a foreigner playing in Korea and I play Master Yi at a high level, right? And at the time, I believe it was Diamond or so, right? And so people were interested in that, right? So I would manage to get 10 to 15 viewers at a time. So I never actually had that phase where I was sitting at one viewer talking to myself, because I immediately had something that people were interested in and I advertised myself on the forums at the time.
How did you know to make that? Because that's very specific. I'm foreigner in Korea, playing on their servers, Master Yi, high level. Like it's very specific. How did you know to do that?
You have some really good questions, don't you? So from my experience in the industry, I knew that people took Korean players seriously because they won at everything they did at the time, right? And so by playing in Korea, that makes me look more good, right? I look better. And I'm also not Korean, which means that people say, oh, this guy speaks English and he can give insight into the Korea. Initially, my stream, what I called it a bridge between Western culture and Korean culture. I was trying to be the bridge, right? So I knew that these were things that people were interested in. And at the time, I didn't dress up like a cow, but I still had the cow name.
So that's a good segue into the persona that you do. So you started off like focusing on a specific area, which was the Yi in Korea. You're at 15 viewers at this point. What got you beyond that 15?
Reddit. It was Reddit. Yeah, so that's one of the things that makes me kind of sad nowadays is the quality of the Reddit. So the League of Legends subreddit, it gets a lot of hate, and I understand that the moderators have to do a lot of work. But as esports grew, the Reddit got less friendly for the content creators, right? But at the time when I was 2014 or so, what you do is you take a really cool play, because people thought of Master Yi, the champion that I played in League of Legends, as a champion that took relatively no skill. You just right click with it, right? And you take a really nice play that's like 30 seconds long or whatever. This is also before YouTube wanted 10-minute videos. You take that 30-second play and you upload it to Reddit, and people are like, oh man, that's really cool. And they go and they watch it, and then they go to your YouTube channel. I had like 20,000 subscribers on YouTube before I actually hired an editor, right? Just from Reddit. And they would come and they check out my stream. And that boosted me up to 100 viewers from my initial Reddit spikes of like 2 or 3 videos.
So was that 100 spike or 100 average?
It started to become average.
That's a big jump.
That was the power of Reddit. And plus, people really like the champion because Master Yi's pretty noob friendly. So it's a lot easier to get viewers that way.
How important was this that the game itself, League, was obviously seeing a big inflection?
Yeah, that's huge.
Do you think you could have done it in a smaller game or a different game?
Slower. And I would be much smaller than I am today.
Because I think what a lot of viewers can relate, it seems like for you that you got from 15 was really quick, and I think there's a real lesson in that you focused on a niche like right away. Like
you had to have a niche. Yeah,
and I think that's still
like
true today.
Why watch you when you can watch somebody else that has some kind of grab to them, right? You have to have something that grabs people.
So that got your 15, but then the 15 to 100 just happens so quick.
Well, that's because at the time when you already build a small viewer base, right, you get the first 15 people. It's kind of like what they say, your money works for you, right? So the more money you have, the more money you make. The more viewers you have, the more viewers you make. So at the time, you post Reddit content or whatever, you already have 15 people that know of you and what you're doing, right? And so when your content rolls out on Reddit, you have people that are familiar with it. Let's say you have 1,000 followers. That's 1,000 people. If they see your content on Reddit or whatever, let's say they're browsing it, they'll upvote it, right? And then you just went to the top. And back then, Reddit was also a lot more lax with the rules as well.
So that's powerful. So you got to that 100, and then when you got to 100, did you, at this point, you're making enough money, I'm guessing, to be full time, or were you still teaching?
No, I was still teaching. I taught for 2 years. And okay, so I taught from 2012 to 2014 of September, and I started streaming in January of 2014. So I taught for 9 months while I was while I was a streamer.
So you went full time essentially in 9 months.
Yes, and that also kind of has its own story as well.
I want to hear it because a lot of listeners, they're working 9 to 5 right now, and they're grinding on the stream in the evenings.
That was me. Yeah, that was me. I would stream from 6 to 12, and I would wake up at 8, and I would work at 8:30. I did that every day, and I did it because I enjoyed it, and I think that's important, that you need to do it because you enjoy it, not because you're expecting to make it into income.
Why did you not give up?
Because I was doing it anyway.
Because you were playing games anyway, or because
I was doing it anyway. To me, the streaming wasn't about making it into a career. Like a lot of the streamers are too focused on making it or whatever, or keeping a schedule. I streamed every day because I wanted to play League and I wanted to talk to people. I didn't play because I wanted to make a lot of money being a streamer. My priorities have changed in a way. I'm not doing my streaming because I want to make a lot of money now. I'm doing my streaming because I want to reach out to more people. It's not really about League anymore for me. It's about reaching to the people.
Interesting. So in 9 months, you went full time. What gave you the confidence to go full time?
There was a streamer that came to Korea at the time, and his name was Phantom Lord, and some people might know of him. So Phantom Lord arrived in Korea. He was a League streamer at the time, and he was very experienced and very big. And we played a little bit together, and he also helped my viewership. So at the time when I met Phantom Lord, I had about 400 concurrent viewers. So there was a nice growth. And then he played in Korea, and my viewers, because I told you, your viewers work for you, right? So my viewers would spam his chat or whatever, be like, hey, play with Cowsep. He's playing in Korea. Me and him would play together. Sorry, my cat's in here. We would play together. And then he ended up doing a fan meeting, and I tried to help him get his monitors and stuff. And he talked to me a little bit about streaming and what it's about. And I wanted to do another year of teaching. And I had about 400 to 500 concurrents when I decided to go full time.
How much, just for perspective, I think for listeners, because back then was a little different. How much money are you making at that level with back then?
Sure. With 500 viewers?
Yeah.
Hopefully my mic's okay. It depends on how it worked out. So at the time, I would say that I went fairly quickly from about $1,000 a month on the streaming. That was about 150 to 200 viewers. I was making about $1,000. And then once I met Phantom Lord and his exposure rubbed off on me a bit, we went to up to like $10,000 a month.
So it was a considerable jump. So he's telling you about the ins and outs of streaming. Did that change your perspective on doing teaching for another year?
Yeah. So when I actually quit streaming, I was at about $3,000 a month, and my viewership went up to about 2,000 because my affiliation with Phantom Lord. And so I decided to take the leap, and he told me some really wise advice, and I guess I'll give the viewers this advice as well, is you are my competition, right? And I'm still telling you that you should take this opportunity and do it. Because if you see this opportunity, like, you're going to really regret not doing it. So even though he was my competition, he still encouraged me to do that.
Do you believe that it's a zero-sum game?
Sometimes. For me, I think it is.
Interesting. So within your,
Um,
was that within your certain like niche, like within League of Legends, for example, you think there's a competition with other League streamers?
it gets really complicated because a lot of people seem to think that it's all rainbows and sunshine and you network with people and you share viewers or whatever. I've never been able to network efficiently with people because there's several reasons. Is I live in a completely different country, so my ping's bad and I don't get to see them normally, and right, so I haven't really gotten to develop those bonds with them. And I love meeting the other content creators, and I consider myself friendly with them, but we we can't really hang out or anything like that. And I feel that like if I'm online, right, if we're all online at the same time, my viewership goes down significantly, right? And I mean, it's obvious because they have other people, more entertaining people to watch. So I I think that unless you're really really close to the streamer, like you hang out or you're always tweeting at each other or you're like best friends, then yeah, the viewership is not so close, right?
Yep. No, I totally understand that. So you made the switch to full time. When you were going full time, did you go, okay, I now need to take this seriously? Were you already taking it seriously before that?
Yeah, I took it too seriously. I got burnt out. I was doing 14 hours a day every day. I would sleep, wake up, stream, maybe shower once a week, right? I wore a cow hat anyway. It was fine. Um, and I developed anxiety disorder from it, maybe from League or whatever. And to this day, you still suffer from it. But I try to take my time very seriously now. I try to focus on me more than I focus on my stream nowadays. It's easy to get stuck in that when you're making the money. I was making 10,000 plus a month easy, right? And and then what happens is you fall out of the flavor of the month, right? And then like when you're going up, everything's good, right? Like I was making 10,000 plus concurrent viewers every stream. And then once people lose interest in you or whatever, like if you're unlucky and they lose interest in you, it starts to feel bad because you're putting in these 14-hour days. I was going to do 420 hours in a month, right? That was that was like my thing there. I was doing 10 to 14 hours a day. And then I'm like, if you guys aren't going to watch me, then why should I do that? I'm only going to do 10 hours a day. And then it just kind of it makes you really salty and
Oh, so
angry
you were
and
becoming
resentful.
resentful of your
Yeah,
audience.
of my viewers. Yeah, yeah, yeah. And to this day, it's still hard to contain that when your viewership goes down. You got to realize that the people that are watching you are the people that love you and the people that you shouldn't be resentful towards, and you end up taking it out on them. And yeah, I started becoming majorly resentful, and the downward spiral, my mental health. I was to other people looking in, I'm this really successful streamer, but I'm falling apart. I was just falling apart inside.
Wow. So how far into your journey, so going full time, you started streaming 14 hours a day, you were taking it super serious. Um, and it was all up and to the right. How far in after that going full time did it start to, whether level out or decline?
Maybe a year and a half. I did it for about a year and a half, got some pretty good income, paid off my student loans, and then I started seeing the decline. And it's really hard to put it into words that like if you think about like how happy you are whenever you see your viewership go up, it feels 10 times worse once it starts going down, right? And like people still look at me and they see successful streamer, but I look at my history or whatever and I just see just the decline, right? I mean, I'm still good. I'm still doing streaming full time, and right now I'm doing fantastic, and my position's good. But it's hard not to compare yourself to what you used to be, and to look at some of the other people, and just kind of remember that. I mean, I guess you can kind of see this history of me where I have a lot of selfish views, and I try not to, right? I try to be as friendly as possible with everybody, but obviously some jealousy gets in there, and I never want to say, man, this guy doesn't deserve it or whatever. I always try to be supportive of other people, but sometimes you have to wonder, it's like, what can I do to get that back?
That's fascinating. So I think it really speaks to the creator life cycle. It really is a roller coaster, and the longer you stretch out that timeline, whether me and David, Stillman64, talk about this all the time. He's been doing it for a decade, and he's seen so many ups and downs over that decade of creating content. He's seen many peaks and troughs, and it is a complete emotional roller coaster every time.
You're never too big to fail.
Yeah,
Like even if you make it, you didn't make it because you're always. I tell my viewers, it's I know my position's great, and I can't. And the reason why I hold on so hard and I feel the way that I do is because I know my position's great and you don't want to lose it, but you don't have control over it.
Do you think that's the same when you're like, if you're at 100 viewers average concurrence and then you go down to 50 for whatever reason, do you think the feeling is the same as when you're at 5,000 and you go down to 1,000?
Yeah. It's always the same.
I think
still feel it. I still feel it. Like, for example, on Facebook, I had 4,000 concurrent viewers, right? And when I end up at 600 peak or whatever, you still feel it. But you try to, that's a skill that you have to develop, is you have to put it behind you, right? Like nowadays I stream on Twitch. When I stream on Twitch, I get about 500 to 1,500 viewers, right? Which is significantly lower than my old peak. I just try to put it behind me now. You still feel it though.
How do you reinvent yourself? You've obviously got a very strong brand, Cowsep. Everyone in the league community knows who you are. You've been creating content for a long time. You mentioned earlier on the podcast of thinking about going into vlogging and things like that. But how do you, throughout that, last decade, kind of reinvent yourself constantly and like refresh your content? How do you approach that process?
See, this is the issue that people can't really help you with. It's kind of like, those people that say, here's how you stream and blah, blah, blah. And then they don't actually have the experience of doing it, right? People, when it comes to reinventing yourself, it's not easy, right? Because people know you for one thing and you have to start all over again and you potentially lose what you already have. So you have to make separate channels and put more time into it. It's going back to when I was a teacher. So instead of being a teacher, I'm a streamer. And if I want to reinvent myself, I have to continue to do my full-time job as a league streamer and do that content on the side. So we're starting all over again, doing it on the side like we used to do our League of Legends content.
And that's a hard thing
to do. Pretty much how you would do it. It's really, really tough to do. But you have this, the important thing in my opinion is that you have this audience that you can turn into something later. Is like, if I have this built up audience on League, which by the way, I love all of my viewers. Thank you guys. If you have this built up audience and you want to do something else, you can guide your audience over to it. So you have a head start, right? And that's why you have to hold on so that when you have something that you're passionate about, you can move some of those people that care about you to that other content.
Is there one thing, if you're looking back over the last, creating all this content, one thing you wish you could go back and tell yourself earlier?
Yeah, you need to start building all your social media like immediately. Like you need to reserve the name Cowsep on Facebook, the name Cowsep on Twitter, Cowsep on Instagram, all those things. You need to start doing all of that. Like, especially, in 2009, if I started branding myself back then, right, I would have had a nice viewer base to transition over to League of Legends, and I wouldn't have had to do it twice because I had to do Grand Chase and then I had to do League of Legends. So I did do it twice, which means, maybe some people are more into the influencer stuff than other people, to the point where, I could have done it twice, but it sure would have made it a lot easier.
It's interesting. When you think about the Cowsep brand, do you think, where does it go from where it is today? Where do you want to take it?
I like to do business, right? I want to be more, I want to do streaming, not because I have to do it, right, for my 9 to 5. I want to work on something business related in the background and then do my streaming maybe 3 hours a day or whatever, 3 hours every other day, and do it with the people that are interested in me and not just League, right? So that's maybe something that I'm interested in pursuing later.
Yeah, I think from a diversifying and stimulating yourself in different areas. You've got a lot of experience on different platforms, which I think is one thing that's becoming more common as creators, but it's a challenge to create content on multiple platforms. How do you stay on top of all of that?
Yeah, so that's actually something that I'm working on the side here is I'm working on trying to help creators do something like that themselves. When I do my other platforms, when I lost my exclusivity to Twitch, right, it really opened up the door to a lot of other platforms that I didn't really think about before. So a lot of smaller streamers are like, where do I stream? Do I stream on Twitch? Do I stream on Facebook? Do I stream on Mixer? But Mixer's gone. What I would tell those kind of people is like, you could just stream to all of them at the same time. You can use websites that will stream you to all the platforms, but make sure that you're not breaching any contracts. If you're a Twitch affiliate, you can't do that. But if you stream to all these platforms at the same time and you just open the chats up, right, then you have this opportunity to grab viewers from multiple areas. And on top of that, you need to be creating your content on, like, let's say that you're streaming on Twitch. You need to take the highlights of those and you need to start putting those on YouTube, because YouTube is a great place to pick up other audiences as well. So you need to always be engaging on these other platforms, I think. And I talked about that, right? I wish I had made my presence on those other platforms earlier, because I neglected them. And I thought, oh yeah, all I'm going to do is just Twitch, right? Oh yeah, Twitch is paying the bills and blah, 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 right? But then, you saw my decline on Twitch, right? So what do you do after that? And now I have my YouTube channel, which is at like 740,000 subscribers. And that can help take the weight off of my Twitch failing or going down. I'm not failing on
Yeah, I was
Twitch,
going to say, you're definitely not failing by any means.
I have this really critical view because of where I had been. Yeah. It's no matter what, it will never be enough for me. For anybody, it will never be enough. That's something you got to remember. You will never be where you want to be. You will have this time where you say, oh man, I made it. I got partnership. And then a month later, it's, oh, why are people leaving? Or it'll never be enough. You always want more.
Yeah. And that can be a good and a bad thing. There's a good element that you're always hungry, but there's always also you got to be mindful of the.
Don't let it consume you.
Yeah. Cool. Is there anything you'd like to say to our listeners before we wrap?
Yeah. I'm assuming your listeners are mostly into content. They want to create content, right?
Yep.
Yeah. So when it comes to content creation, everybody's unique and individual in the way they do it. If you don't see results right away, don't feel discouraged, but think critically about what can I do to reach these audiences. Like as when we talked about my journey, I started out with like the 15 viewers, even though I was a fresh streamer. Don't go around and post your link in people's chats and stuff, but think about something where people will organically see your content that will drive them to come see your stream or your YouTube channel, right? I think YouTube's great at it. Like if you make good content that people are like interested in, like this guide, you make a cool guide or something, or you make a really nice play, people say, oh, that guy's cool. Let me go check him out. I think that's more effective than saying, I'm here, come watch. Right? Or sitting in the streaming list or whatever and expecting people to come. That only works if you're like top 10, right? The people rarely come. You have to make this content that somebody says, oh, that's cool. Let's go check that guy out. Like I'll search for guide. Like think about how you find your content creators, right? You'll be playing a new game and you'll say, I'm going to look up a guide for this. You see this guy and then you start watching his content and then you go to a stream. I think that's a really great way to build your stream, especially if you find yourself stagnating and people aren't coming.
That is awesome. You heard it here, everyone. Cowsep, thank you so much for coming on and sharing your journey today. Where can people find you if they want to go check out your content right after this?
Well, it depends on the kind of content you want, but you can find me on Facebook. You can find me on YouTube, Twitch, Trovo, just Cowsep. Just search for Cowsep. I am everywhere as Cowsep. See, I got my names and you should too.
He's nailed it. Awesome. Well, thanks very much, man. Take care.
Yes, thank you.